Hello and welcome to Hey, I Loved That Movie, the podcast where we rewatch the films we loved when we were younger to see if they still hold up. I'm Dan.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Helena.
And for this episode, we have special guest Damian Robb from Sanspants Radio.
Hey guys, pleasure to be here.
Which movie have you chosen today?
I've chosen The Sandlot. In our pre-chat, I realised none of you guys would have been old enough to appreciate when it first came out.
But we can appreciate it now.
Yeah.
To be honest, it gives a very unique perspective on it. That's something that I want to talk about is your guys' opinion on if kids today saw this movie, what do we think their opinion of it would be? Because it's a very 90s movie, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, it's very...
Yeah, they're
incredibly 90s.
There are some problematic moments, let's call it. That's a generous, I think. There are some things that you're like, ooh, don't know if they'll stick around in today's day and age. Like, even just that the group of kids, there is not a single girl to be found in all the group of the Sandlot kids, which is madness by today's standards. Like, you just never have that in a movie.
I feel like this is a film where we should do this. What is the sort of main plot of The Sandlot?
It's focused on this guy, Scotty Smalls, who's sort of new to town. I think it's like an LA sort of suburban town. He basically is a bit of a loner. He's quite a bright kid, but isn't super sporty, but wants to make friends, especially because mum is bullying him into making friends at times. And so inevitably runs into this group of boys, as I mentioned, playing baseball in this Sandlot. And then one of them, Benny, sort of takes him under his wing, introduces him. He makes all these great friends. And then in order to impress them when they run out of baseballs, steals his stepdad's baseball, which turns out to be signed by Babe Ruth. It goes over one of the neighbor's walls into the backyard where the beast, this giant, ferocious, mythological dog almost, quickly grabs it, and the kids sort of have to get the baseball back and, avert disaster, I guess.
Hilarity.
Yeah.
Hilarity
infused.
As they called it several times, the biggest pickle they had ever been in their life.
I am so glad you brought that up. The narration... It's such an interesting film. Like this, I was reading up on it prior to this podcast, and the guy who's doing the voiceover for older Scotty Smalls is the same guy who both wrote and directed it, I believe. So this is clearly just his massive passion project. And it really comes through. But yeah, like having that line, the biggest pickle of all time, come through again and again. Like to me, it really read as like a middle grade novel, like those sort of early chapter novels and you're sort of doing that to tease the kids to basically like, keep reading. We promise there's action coming amongst all of this. Like that's how it felt. But yeah, it really stood out because the biggest pickle of all time is such a unique phrase to repeat over and over again.
It's sort of one of those times where they said it so many times that it sort of lost its meaning a little bit. I was like, pickle.
What?
Just as well as it's like that. Well, don't tell us there's a pickle coming. Show us. Like this is a movie.
That's the problem with when there's such heavy narration over a story as well. It was like, you could just show it to us. You could just have the movie play out.
So. The pickle bit, and I've just realised it's just hit me why I think they keep using the word pickle. I think it's a baseball term.
Oh, it might be actually.
because like right at the end, so one of the we don't remember character names on this podcast.
The Jet.
The Jet. When he has that weird dream sequence where he's met by not Babe Ruth. I think he tells him, "Oh, do the pickle." I think it's
so it's when he's running between the two bases and they're passing the ball and they're trying to get him out, but they don't know which base to out him on.
Oh yeah,
that's the pickle.
So I think I don't know enough about baseball I feel like I would have known more about this film if I knew about baseball.
I think that should be
it hadn't occurred to me to Google baseball pickle. Just now, but that's what it is. It's got a rundown.
That makes sense. And like that raises an interesting point. Obviously, the four of us, none of us have grown up in the States where not only is this movie based, but obviously this particular version of baseball and the world it's in, it's like the world is so uniquely American and like
so American. That's why I was genuinely quite surprised that this was the movie you chose because it's not nostalgic for your own childhood.
Definitely not. No. No, and like you said, like you guys aren't sporty. I was never a sporty kid. I am definitely not a sporty man. So I'm almost surprised I chose this movie too. But when we're chatting about like, oh hey, I love that movie, The Sandlot was like the first one that came into my head because it's one of those movies where I remember as a kid enjoying it. And as an adult, I'm like, why? Why do I even like it? I don't even know any of the rules of baseball. I've never seen a full game of baseball ever. And I'm not a sporty kid. I think it was just like, I remember loving it, but I remember almost zero of the details of this movie. So that's why I almost like had to choose it, to just be like, what was that movie? Did it exist, or did I dream this thing? Like, whereas like other movies like, I don't know, Hook and these other ones where I've watched them a bunch and love them, but I still remember them in great detail. The Sandlot sort of stood apart as this movie I remember loving, but have no real recollection of.
Yeah, that's fair. I was going to ask what your actual memories of it were, but clearly it's just watching the
Very
movie.
little.
It's honestly like The Beast. Like I remember that beat, obviously, and like what on this rewatch. Oh yeah, it was all coming back, and like I can kind of even see there's so many big kid joyous set pieces in the first half of this film. Like it's almost just set piece of like the kids would adore, like these obviously like the carnival and everyone throwing up, the kids at the pool with the lifeguard and all these sorts of things. So these huge set pieces that I can go, okay, yeah, as little baby Damian, that would have stuck in my head as being like, oh, that's amazing, you know.
Yeah. Very funny.
Very funny, good set pieces.
Maybe not aged as well now.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
You mean chewing tobacco, like kids sharing a packet of chewing tobacco hasn't aged well?
Oh no, I meant the sexual assault.
Yeah, that too.
I'm so happy you called it for what it is, because me watching that, I'm like, oh no, this is like, I'm really glad that the girl kicks him out of the pool straight away.
Yeah.
The kid who like tricked her into getting a kiss. And then even the narration is like, he did a terrible thing. But then it completely undercuts it by her sort of giving him a cheeky like, oh, but I didn't mind it that much. And then obviously jumping ahead.
They get married.
They get married and have like dozens of children because they're so hot for each other. It's so wrong. It's so wrong.
The film handled that really weirdly, like you said. The voiceover immediately goes, it was terrible what he did, but in a sort of like giddy, childish...
Well, he finishes it, but it was cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sort of like,
yes.
No, sexual assault isn't cool. Don't do it. Don't trick someone into kissing you.
Like it knows the film knows that scene is not okay, but then goes, but they're kids.
I was kind of not too mad about it until he puts his hand over her head and like pushes her head into his mouth, and that's that's assault.
Yes, that's how I felt too. I like the lead up to the scene. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm remembering this. I'm remembering what happens here. Like even the scene, like even all of them all the kids in the pool, like watching her. You're like, oh, this is a weird scene to have like 9 kids having boners in the pool. Like that's a weird feat to include in your movie.
Yeah, at least they did it in the pool and not.
But that is very 90s of having like a group of kids staring at a slightly older girl with their mouths open. That's a very like 90s kids film.
But a healthier side would be that she's unattainable and they don't go to like great length to assault or
after that it becomes a problem.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. About that scene, and this is hilarious because I read this before I watched the film. Apparently, there was a defamation lawsuit against the director and the writer by the guy that kid is based on. So he said because his name is really similar to the character's name, and they were friends at school. He was like, that character is based on me, and I was like, okay. Watching the first bit of the film, I was like, why was there a lawsuit? And then that scene happened. I was like, oh no, there it is.
Also, by the looks of it, he lost the lawsuit.
He won it.
Oh, did he?
And then it went on to like a further court, and then he lost it.
Oh shit!
Yeah, which is it's such a weird thing in the film.
I'd be pretty pissed off, to be fair, if I had someone I went to school with made a movie with like Selena Seath and she did something vile. I'd be like, unfair.
Especially when it's so memorable, like you walk away and that's easily one of the bigger beats in your head as like what sticks in there. And so if you ever met a person, you're like, oh, you sexually assaulted someone when you were a teenager. Cool, that's my lasting memory of you.
Were they even teenagers? Were they? How old are these kids?
I'm guessing they're like 13 or so, but I think Benny's a little bit older.
Yeah, Benny looked like, he could be anywhere from 12 to 15, but some of them, it was such, I mean, the diversity wasn't fantastic, but height-wise, it was fairly good. Which I guess is pretty typical for kids going through puberty, is that some will have started, some will have not, and I guess they're all about the same age, but because there's none of that school side of it, you don't see, they're all in this year, they're all going into that year.
Yeah,
true.
I could not keep track of the amount of kids in that group.
Oh,
like I know they said there were like 9 of them, but then like in the carnival scene, I swear there were extra kids that were just there. It was odd. I could not keep track of what kids were doing what.
Yeah.
No, it felt like too many. Like the brothers that would repeat themselves. I'm like, well, they're not really serving much of a purpose, other than that one gag that's, not that hilarious. But I guess you need. I'm guessing you had 9 because obviously you must have 9 to round out a team. So they're like, oh shit, we better have young kids.
That was Benny's justification of bringing on Smalls, because he needed them to be a team.
Yeah.
Not that there's a proper. Well, there's one match actually, isn't there? There's one proper baseball.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So I guess
with those
important.
the preppy people or whatever it is.
I couldn't tell. Were they rich? Were they just different, or did they go to a different school? Like what? I couldn't quite work out why they were rivals.
I think they were meant to be like an official team. Like a little league team. I think
Yeah.
I assume from them having like a uniform. I didn't really get it from anything that they were saying.
No, like that was such a quick beat with those characters. Like I really love this movie. Obviously, like the problematic stuff we've talked about is problematic, but I'll be like more forgiving given that it is the 90s and rah.
Yeah.
But it does, like I said, it's got so many beautiful set pieces in the first half. Like the one that I really loved watching it this time was the fireworks, playing under the fireworks. I thought,
that was
gorgeous.
brilliant.
That was really nice.
Yeah,
such a sweet scene.
Yeah, and like visually really interesting and great, and again super memorable.
It was pretty as well. Although sometimes the kids did look quite gormless.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. It's not great lighting for photo shoots, but it did look very cool. But then the back half of the movie, I mean, like the whole movie structurally is an entire mess. Like I love it. It's a mess of a film because the first act is really great. Following Scotty, his journey to make friends. He's got a weird home life where mum's basically like, hey loser, go make some friends already.
Yeah, I was when I saw her, I was like, I don't remember my parents being that aggressive about me making friends. That was like a worry.
The thing with his stepdad as well, I think, it's sort of standard Disney almost, wasn't it? Like he was kind of not an evil stepdad, but if you tell a kid you're going to do something and you're also like in a committed relationship with their mother, you should follow through on that promise. You shouldn't.
He wasn't like bad enough to be the villain. It's like they had him as a villain, but not as like a bad guy.
Terrible teacher though.
Terrible.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, just gives him like the biggest black eye I've ever seen in a movie.
And I also love it's at that time where we're just like, cool, we'll slap some raw meat on that bad boy. Let's ensure infection.
I was disappointed. I thought that was going to be like not like a Chekhov's gun, but like I thought that meat was going to play in to I had this idea that they were going to tame the beast by giving it loads of meat, and they were all going to give each other black eyes or something, get all the meat off their parents, run, and I had this whole extra.
Yeah, that would have been great. And like that to me is the main problem with this film is like I said, structurally it's basically non-existent. Like first act is actually really great with this kid obviously new in town. We kind of get that he's intelligent, but a bit of a loner. You can see he actually does want to make friends, rah. And then like even the battle to sort of win these kids over, like Ham and the rest of them who aren't that keen. But you've got Benny being an absolute sweetheart and sort of.
Yeah, I love Benny. If I have kids, I want them to be like Benny.
Oh my God, Benny's like the coolest kid ever. Like not only cool, he's nice. Wow, what a champion!
He shoots a baseball, or he hits a baseball into his hand so that they think he can catch. It's amazing.
Right.
I was getting like light romance vibes from those two.
Yeah, no, look at the whole thing.
Yeah.
I felt like that if this was released later, there'd be a revelation.
Yeah.
There'd be a late revelation in this film.
But then after that first act, it forgets who the protagonist is because Scotty has no agency whatsoever. Like for a movie, like if that your protagonist is the one that should be moving it along at every step. So like him even choosing to get his stepdad's baseball, cool, that's him having some agency. But that literally happens right before that second act turn. Like it's just after the midpoint really. And that's crazy to me. Like they basically have a great first act and then they just have the first half of the second act is just these wonderful set pieces, which like I said, I really enjoyed, but structurally there's no good.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like once he gets the ball, it's not really him leading the charge to get it back. Like even the fact that Benny has that Babe Ruth dream, like that's the dream a protagonist should have.
But then they couldn't have been oh, this kid who's never played baseball before suddenly knows everything about baseball. They had to have it be the kid who cares.
Yeah.
Which is
I guess in a
annoying.
way it's to show that Smalls is part of the group, and now that they're all friends with him, they're happy to help him out. But
It
still,
was strange. I think what it shows is that he didn't feel like the main character in his own childhood,
Which
and
Yeah,
Benny
that's really
did.
interesting.
Like Benny was such a huge part. Like, you know, he saved him from months of being alone with his Meccano and his mum breathing down his neck
Right.
saying, "Make some friends."
yeah.
And his stepdad promising to teach him how to play ball. And instead he gets this best friend, older brother. I will make these kids like you because I like you.
potential love interest.
Yeah.
Sort of.
The other kids were great as well. There was one line that really cracked me up, which is when Benny's been
Mm.
talking to Smalls for a while, and he's on the way back, and Ham's like, "Hey, hurry up! My clothes are going out of fashion."
Yeah, that line.
Yeah.
I love that immediately
Listen,
someone else
yeah.
quipped in like, "Oh, they already have," and he was like, "Oh, shut up!" Like
Yeah.
it was the little.
That's the
the
kind
little
of line you're like, I'm gonna find a way to use that in real life.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
really good. yeah.
I think I might have seen this in like clips of like greatest insults or whatever,
yeah.
where there's the two kids going back and forth about the little league captain, I
Yes.
guess, and
Yeah.
the other guy. I can't even remember which kid it was, but it's
I
like
think it was
fart
Ham.
breath,
I think it was
maggot
Ham,
eater.
which
Yeah.
even then you've got like the chubby kid whose name is Ham. That's also a problem. But anyway, I think it was him because he was like a great character. But
The chubby
He's
kid,
great.
apart from his like affinity for food in it, he's
Right.
as fit as the others, and like he gets like he has like the big job of like in the weird winch scene.
yes.
Yeah.
He's doing like the heavy lifting in that, which is like, well, fair
Yeah.
play, because why wasn't Benny doing that? Because he's clearly the fittest out of all of them. But this guy's he's solidly built. He's one of those
Yeah.
people that looks like he's probably going to end up being like 6'4".
The kids felt very like they felt like kids. They were like mean. They were little shits throughout the
Yeah.
film, but they
Oh, yeah,
felt
that-
like actual kids.
That hive mentality of
yeah.
like none of us can like this kid. It was only Benny being like, no, give him a chance, like repeatedly,
And, like-
that they actually like accepted him, because there was that like pack mentality that they had. I did love
Yeah.
the melodrama and some of the hammy acting was
Mm.
so
Yeah.
good.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Great.
when he falls over to like misses the ball as it's being thrown to him the first time, or hit towards him the first time, and they are
Yeah.
like one of them like full on throws himself on the ground
Yeah.
laughing.
yeah.
And just
That-
every time that Squints cleaned his glasses as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was such a big
Yeah.
production to clean
Oh,
his
It's
glasses.
such a big deal. I think the way the kids are the laughing scene was really intense. For like an early scene, it's really unnerving.
If you've ever been bullied as well and you've had people
Mm.
laugh at you, like it stings.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's it. That scene's really cool in that. So the dog setup, the beast thing, is clearly like the kids' collective imagination making
yeah.
this dog huge.
Especially he's over
Yeah.
20 years old, which is
Yeah.
impressive.
right.
Do you think that laughing scene is the kids' imagination making it worse? Do you reckon that was
Absolutely.
kind of
Right.
the point
I
of
think
it
I
being?
think all of this film is in that it's still it's so much from Smalls' perspective, where these kids, I think, even like the witty one-liners and the really funny bit, that everything's hammed up, like the chase scene with the dog.
Yeah.
At the
Yeah,
end,
yeah,
where he's
yeah.
like going into the cinema, the dog smashes through the screen, like paper screen. The dog's fine, and like running. He jumps over the cake. And there's this whole thing with the cake, and then the guy with the stilts falls on it. It's such a like a child telling you a story, and like and then this happened, and then this happened, and as they're getting more excited, they're sort of exaggerating more and more and more.
So what
Right,
you're saying is
yeah.
this is the most meta film because this is a film about someone talking about their nostalgia for something happening.
Yeah.
Well, we
It
talk
is
about on
nostalgic. I think one of the reasons that it has aged well is that it's not set in the 90s, and it's not trying to be a 90s film. Like it is
True.
set in the 60s, and it is incredibly beautifully 60s. Like it's so pretty.
Yeah.
It's such a lovely film, and it's so summery and fresh, and the
Yeah.
colors are just gorgeous. Like the pink bungalow house that they live in is just, it's so ice cream.
The world, that's something that I really liked about it. Like, it's very American, but the world is so well realized. It's like that. It's a world where baseball is the most important thing, and summers last forever, basically. And like, you are going to build these sort of crazy inventions to solve your problems with all your mates, and have these big sleepovers where you hear the local mythology about this giant dog that's lived forever. Like, it's such a well-realized world. And I think that's part of the nostalgia for me as a kid watching that, would be wanting to be part of it, wanting to be part of this gang. And like, I'm not proud at all of this, but if I was any kid in this group, it definitely would have been Scotty, like that little nerdy kid who's like, oh, I don't know how to baseball, who can't even throw it. The cringe levels of him putting it in the ball in the baseball glove because he's afraid to throw it.
It's so sweet though.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, but it breaks my heart.
I think the group of people who relate to Smalls and the group of people that sit down and do podcasts
Very
probably overlap like a lot.
That Venn diagram is just one circle right there. yeah. Even him, like, one thing I really liked is him when he trying to sort of assimilate into the group or like get their acceptance. And you see him, like one of you guys mentioned before about how like they would make fun of each other in this like playful way that was also kind of aggressive. But you see him kind of like watching it and sort of putting it together as like, oh, well, that's how you do it. Okay. And then like try to participate and get into it. And again, like I think there's a point there for me where I'm like, oh, okay, that's how you be friends with people. Because growing up, I always had I'm a twin, so I've got a twin brother and we were best mates. So I didn't need to know how other kids did it because we already had our own sort of way of being best friends.
Were you were the kids in this film that repeat each other every 2 minutes?
Oh God, I hope not. Oh boy, I hope not. No, let's say we'll two Scotties for my own ego. But when I went to like primary school and like my parents purposely put us in separate rooms so we wouldn't be those kids. So like we're in separate grades. So yeah, we weren't too codependent. And that's when I kind of had to be like, oh, how do I make friends with people that aren't Jono, my twin brother? And so like, yeah, there's a lot of me that can watch this and relate to it. And like, I'm sure as a kid watching that, none of that was happening. It was all subconscious. But as an adult, I'm like, oh, no wonder I loved it. I would have been the kid putting the ball in the baseball glove because he's too afraid to throw it.
I moved schools when I was 9, and that was totally same. Like, how do I make friends with these people? I moved up here as well, so they were all a year older than me, which was a big deal when I was 9, and they were double digits. And it was like I that bit where they're all laughing at him, and he just like, look, it's fine, I'm just gonna go. I don't want to. They don't want me here. And like, I felt that because I had them all like laughing at me at one point because I couldn't climb a tree the same way as them.
Right. There it is. Yeah.
It was just one of those, like, kids will pick up like on anything. Like they are utter psychopaths.
Right.
Kids are psychopaths.
They haven't got fully developed empathy yet.
Definitely not. And like that's the thing, like the thing that they care about, like this baseball, like if you were in Australia or the UK, I'm assuming, like, if you're an American coming here, it's like, hey guys, who wants to play baseball? Now you would be the one being laughed at because no one's going to play baseball.
Rounders, that's a girls' game.
Yeah. So like this poor little nerdy kid coming in and doesn't know, like also like him, the way he lies about knowing Babe Ruth but not knowing Babe Ruth, because obviously Babe Ruth has so many friggin' nicknames. That actually played really well for me. I thought that was great because he could lie up to a point where obviously he got in the shit because he doesn't even know that Babe Ruth is the same guy they've been talking about the whole time because they've been using so many nicknames. But I was thinking watching this, like, so he gets into part of the group, which is great, and then we have those lovely scenes where he's just part of the gang, and I guess that's kind of like wish fulfillment. That's really nice. It's really good to see. But I think for me watching this, I was like, if I was to sort of fix this movie, all that really needs to happen is that he gets the ball because he's so desperate to get in with the group. But by the time he gets the ball, there's no stakes for him getting that ball. Like there's one, they've well and truly accepted him by that point. And then 2, it's just to keep playing. Like the rest of them are like, oh, we'll go home. Oh, well, that happens, We just saw the ball be split apart. That's awesome. Where I think if he got the ball because he was still trying to impress everyone and get on their good side, or if they were actually playing that preppy team and basically like the first ball blew up and then for us to win and have this sweet victory, we need another ball. Yeah. Oh, I know where a ball is. I'm going to grab it. Like,
were low, I guess, in his mind. And it wasn't fully, I think even if they just emphasized it a little bit more, they'd said like, look, I'll be grounded for the rest of the summer. I won't see you guys again. Because like that is a big deal.
I think what they could have done, which would have been really good, is if they set up like an event at the end. If they were like halfway through the film, there was like, there's a chance for us to be a little league team and to like actually play in a proper game, and how good would that be? And then the worst phrase I've ever heard, busted the guts out of a ball, happens. Horrifying phrase.
Right.
And then like you have he steals the Babe Ruth ball. If the dad's away and the mum's there, the mum could say, if you don't get that back, you're going to be grounded. Because
Yeah.
the
Right,
the mum's on his side, so she
Mm.
wouldn't be like you're going to be grounded. It's like no, that's your stepdad's
The mum
fault.
would
Get it
probably
back.
be like, "Oh, but it's the nice blind baseball player. Just go and ask him. I've heard the dog's
Yeah.
lovely."
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it would have
right.
all been okay.
But-
Like you would have had quite a short film.
I think if
Mm.
there's a setup for like something at the end that him having the ball stops, and then he could
Yeah.
that could be the if we don't get this back, we can't because there aren't 9 of us. We can't
Yeah.
play in that game at the end.
There
Yeah,
are definitely
yeah.
ways
Like
to raise the stakes to make it a little bit more
yes.
meaningful.
Yeah.
And like
Um,
having that actual league, like really that should have just been the game. They've challenged them to a game. Cool, that's what we're leading up to for the whole movie. And even like them challenging to the game, well, we need 9. So like the rest of that could even be with the rest of the group go, fine, he can play with us because we need 9 to face this actual team, you know.
Yeah.
But they still
then
not
that way
fully
he's-
accepted him.
But they're still not fully accepted him. So him getting the ball still has higher stakes. 1, so they can win this game. 2, so he can get on side with them, you know. And then still have those set pieces, but more have them spread out throughout the film rather than just like have them so early on. Yeah, it's a big
he
clump.
does disappear into the crowd really badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, during the second part he does, and I think that's just because the 2 parts aren't connected.
No,
Yes,
like
they seem
an
very-
event
very
happens,
separate.
and then the second thing
Mm.
happens.
Yeah, the friendship forms, and then they're all BFFs. I mean, it's great that these kids did accept him so quickly. Like, good on them.
yeah,
They're
Yeah.
very easily impressed, but at the same time,
Right.
like there could have been a little bit more tension for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
One gripe we've had with a few movies that we've watched is the sort of countdown thing being we've got to get out of this situation in half an hour. We've only got 30 minutes. Or like Resident Evil, you've got to get
Yeah.
out of there before you're buried alive in XYZ
Yeah.
time. And it's like this seems like it's taking forever and it's getting quite frustrating. But in this film, it's the opposite, where there's not that time frame. We sort of know that the stepdad's going to be back from his work trip at the end of the week, but then it's so difficult to tell what is happening in the day. When are they sleeping?
Yeah.
Like, there's the time frame's really difficult to like work out because it's not like, okay, we've got 7 days, day 1, day 2, day 3. So that tension is really rising.
Yeah. That's what it needed. It's like a ticking clock to really sort of. Also, that dog, like they've said that this dog eats every ball that comes into its yard. So you're like, okay, well the ball's done for anyway. Like even if they get it back at this point,
well, they
like,
they kept
stepdad's
seeing
gonna
it though.
realise.
They did see through the little hole, and they had I loved the periscope. To be fair,
that was fun,
that was very cute,
Like-
and that was such a like common kids like craft or toy as well. Even I had one of those as a kid. Being a proper child of the 90s and not the 60s, mine was made out of hard plastic.
Nice.
But periscopes were like weirdly fascinating. I think because you're quite short, so anything that can make you taller.
Everything is cool. Yeah, I think the second half there are a load of really good bits, like them actually trying to get in ball, the things that they build to get the ball, the fact that none of it works. The vacuum scene is brilliant.
Where it blows up and you get the bit from War of the Worlds.
Yeah. I think the Beast is brilliantly done as this like massive puppet monster that you see like a paw of, and then the head, and then I think it's really well done. I just think it's just not connected to anything.
I did really enjoy that little black and white movie that they make when he's narrating the story, the original story of the Beast.
Right.
And it's all like really hammy and really like melodramatic, and they just, you know, the puppetry and the bad guys, the thieves that are literally in like black and white striped tops with Zorro masks on. It was very cute and very sweet, because I'm like, this is a man telling a story that he remembers a kid telling him the story, and there's so much enthusiasm. And it was very heartwarming, even though it's such a clearly bullshit story as well.
Yeah,
and I think like as a kid you're supposed to be like and then as an adult you're like okay,
Well,
okay, 20-year-old dog.
I have some questions. Yeah.
And I like the way
still?
I really like the way, and this is like almost his final bit of autonomy in the film, is when he stands like, no, you guys are just telling me that to scare me. He like stands up to them, and I thought that was pretty brave for a little kid, because there's that peer pressure. Well, the 8 other guys believe it, even Benny, and he's like, no. But then obviously because he's a kid, he is won round very quickly, and also the dog does bark and is scary.
Yeah,
it's a big dog. Like it's a really big. Those dogs are huge.
Yeah.
And like when a dog is taller than you as a kid, the dog is huge.
So it's a full mastiff, isn't it?
Yeah.
The dog that's actually used as a mount in D&D because it is so big.
I had a bit of a question about the whole Beast setup as well, which is like for how much you watched this film as a kid, do you think the setup of the Beast is part of why you're now a bit of a scaredy boy? Because it is kind of terrifying. It's very like Jurassic Park-esque when they're first introducing it with the fence rattling and stuff like that.
There is a
like
shot of the dinosaur shadow, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. It's definitely interesting that, like, of all the things I could have remembered, like I said, there's some beautiful set pieces. I remembered the beast, the thing that would have scared me at the time. And like as a kid, I remember being my neighbor. Like I lived on 5 acres out sort of in the country, and so we had a couple of dogs, but they were just little dogs. But our neighbor had some like bigger dogs that would bark at you, and so of course that was terrifying as a kid. And I remember being terrified of dogs. I freaking love dogs now. Like give me dogs every day, I'd love it. But as a kid, they did scare me. So I'm sure like this movie, that element of it would have been scary. But then even like I'm curious, like the reversal of the dog actually being super nice. Like, I wonder if even young me loved that because it's like, oh, I don't have to be scared. Like, this is actually lovely.
Yeah, it's better than a horror film where it's like, and you leave feeling like, oh,
right.
God. The
world's
like,
a terrible place.
Yeah. I had an inkling for a long time the dog was going to be nice.
Yeah.
But I wasn't particularly surprised. But I was surprised that the blooming fence fell on him.
Yeah.
And then the other kid, those horrible Weasley little children didn't go over and immediately try. The dog was whimpering, and I was just like, he lifts up the dog, and the dog is.
That was a really nice bit.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I love that bit. Like it was a good reversal that the dog wasn't even like a villain. It was like you guys have been saying. It's that kid mentality of bigging everything up and like, if a dog's bigger than you, of course, it's this giant monster that's out to kill you. So then when like in that moment, I think that's when we actually see, obviously we've been seeing the real Mastiff running around town, but all the shots have been very low. So it still looks really huge, everything like that. But then as soon as the fence falls on it, well, now, no, it's just a dog. Like it isn't this great monster anymore. So I love it. And I love even Scotty being like, guys, you have to help me. That's the beat that he needs at that point, because I guess that's his arc, is to get this confidence and still be him, but be the confident version of him.
Yeah, the one that saved
I love that.
trapped dogs.
Right.
Yeah. I have no time for children that are cruel to dogs.
Yeah, I feel like throughout this film, there are little bits that remind you that they're kids, because you just get lost in, these are just characters. Of like, and they're just characters in this film doing a thing, and then every now and then you're like, oh no, they're like 12.
Yeah,
and I think that's like a solid bit.
Like scrape together money for a bot, like they have to go into round recycling bottles, or picking up bottles to get like cash in the deposit to get a baseball.
I think the dog scene with the fence, I think that's a big part of it. When you're like, no, these are just really scared kids.
It's like that idea of actually, if they release that dog, they're actually setting him free again. Like he's not chained up, but at the same time, like he's more concerned that the dog's hurt than that the dog's going to hurt him, and that's really big. And that's like, oh yeah, you're a good one. You're a good kid now.
Yes.
From when I first looked at the poster for this movie, because obviously hadn't seen it before, and it's got all the kids' hands on the baseball bat and then the dog paw on top, I thought it was going to be like an Air Bud situation. Imagine Air Bud, but with that dog.
Or Air Bud, but with Air Bud being the villain of the piece.
Air Bud baseball is difficult because they can't hold anything.
Yeah,
football, they can just kick it. It's fine.
He could be in the what's it called? Right, the backstop.
Yeah,
I know that's cricket, but same thing.
Dogs are good at catching, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Some dogs are.
That's true.
Oh yeah. I mean, my parents' dog is not good at catching. She's good at running way too fast towards the ball and like flipping over several times trying to stop herself when she's gone straight past it.
Yeah,
they're like a lot of kids at baseball, really. I suppose.
Right.
I also really like the ending with I've forgotten his name.
James Earl
Jones. That's it. Yeah, yes. I like that whole setup. I'm disappointed he wasn't like introduced earlier as like a person or like a character, even if like he knew the kids' parents.
Yeah, strange. I suppose it is a standard kids movie thing though, that the parents are just totally uninvolved. But it's like
completely unaware.
Clearly, this kid is clearly getting more and more into baseball, and the stepdad still seems to have minimal time for him, which I guess is fine. But surely at some point he'd be like, "Oh, by the way, have you seen my sweet? Like, you should know about this now. Have you heard of the Great Bambino? Are you interested in baseball? Do you want to like talk about it a little bit? Ask me some questions. How about I tell you about the time I met the Great Bambino and they gave me this ball, and like, or at least the mum." Talking about it with him, or being like, oh, did you know that there's this famous baseball player that lives around the corner? He's blind. It would be really nice if you went and talked to him.
Yeah, I think that's just like a lack of setup on the parents' side. Like if they set up the stepdad as being a super busy person, and not just like the one or two scenes where he says, but I'm really busy, I can't do it. if they set
Right.
him up, put more effort in the beginning, maybe instead of having some of the big set pieces be as long as they are, have the dad, the stepdad being busy and like not being able to be involved in, even if like, can we go to the carnival? And the stepdad's like, nah, sorry, I'm busy.
Yeah.
Like have put that more effort in at the beginning, and then you can have like a much better payoff later because then the ball feels more connected. The Babe Ruth ball feels way more connected.
It was like it was a bit strange, wasn't it, that it was all to like he gets the baseball to give to his stepdad, and it's like, oh, he's only going to be grounded for a week, and it's like, what about your relationship? Where's the development there?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, and we're like we get on better now. And I was like,
Yeah.
why?
Because he can throw.
And I got you a better baseball.
Yes.
I got you a baseball with more signatures. So
all right, you may now call me Dad, I suppose.
Yeah. But yeah, I really enjoyed that James Earl Jones scene just because it felt really like sweet, and it would have been nice to have him be a bit more introduced as a character, even if he was just shown as like the mean owner.
Yes, if you like, I think they should have introduced both sides of his character. Like one, we see him be like almost make him as mythological as the Beast, sort of have him as this big scary character as well.
I mean, these kids like piss off his dog on a regular basis, basically.
Yeah, he's not going to be happy with him.
Like, he's blind, he's not deaf. It must be annoying.
Yeah.
If they meet the parents, and then you could have them say like, "Oh, our kid's starting to get into baseball," and James Earl Jones is like, "Are you the kids that play in the yard behind the fence?" And he's like, "Yeah." And it's like, "Can you leave my dog alone?" Sort of like,
can you stop bullying my dog, please?
Yeah, so he's interested in baseball. There's like a hint that he knows baseball, but you also like, here's an adult, he has a dog that he loves.
Right, yes.
Well, he doesn't love it that much because he leaves it chained up in the yard all the time on a big heavy chain.
Yeah. But that's like the job of a junkyard dog.
But it's not a junkyard, it's just a junky garden. It's just a dog, it's just a pet.
But even if they'd like introduced him as a baseball player, even if the kids didn't know that this great baseball player they were aware of and their neighbor was the same person, like even if they're like, oh, you haven't heard of the Babe Ruth, you haven't heard of this guy, you haven't so introduce it so that when they met him, they're like, holy crap, you're one of our heroes. We didn't realize the two were the same. Because just again, it's that setup for payoff later. It needed a bit more of that. But James Earl Jones stole the show as far as I was concerned. As soon as he stepped on stage, he's a breath of fresh air. Like he's just so charisma. Like he's just got it coming out of him. Yeah, he was great. I loved it.
He was like a big name at the time as well. Well, I mean, he still is, but even then, like he was a huge name. And I think that having his name on the film and him being in like 10 minutes of it,
right,
kind of a waste. Like, you got James Earl Jones, use him, have him in the film, and he is just like a nice, sweet character as well.
Yeah, I feel like he could have just been, even if he was just in like a couple of scenes in the background, like you see him at the pool in like, sunbathing, or he's just about just at the 4th of July celebrations, or
right.
And then they have the very end where they're all explaining that they go off, which is made when I sort of came to the conclusion that this is Stand By Me, but for soft boys. It's soft boys Stand By Me.
100%. They don't find a dead body; they just make friends with a dog. That's the soft version of that, I guess.
It's soft boy. It's but they all go off. It says like where they go and what they do. And one of them, like, they all kind of make sense. Right. Some of them go off to make, like, they become businessmen. The creepy kid marries the girl that has like tons of kids. One of them really stood out to me though, and one of them got really obsessed with the 60s and disappeared.
Yes.
Did he join a cult?
Right.
That's joined a cult.
That's got to be the only take I think you can get on that one. Like the 60s swallowed him whole, and we never. That's such a dark tone to throw in at the end of this film.
And I feel like it's a reference to something, but I can't work out what. So I think it's just a cult.
The weird thing is, it became a reference, but sort of retroactively, because a few years later, he was in a show called The 60s.
Oh, that's fascinating.
I think that was in, like, 99. So, like, a few years later.
Did the guy who wrote this have a friend who joined a cult? Is, I think, the question that
I like, I don't mind it is so Stand By Me. I think Stand By Me must have been like one of the first movies to do it, that wrap up of here's what happened to them. I think for this movie, it's actually like, I liked it, but I actually feel like it's a wrong turn to take, because for a kid watching this, and this is where I wanted to talk about, like, kids watching this today, what would they think of it? But to me, it's like, I would want to leave kids watching this thinking this world is existing and will continue to exist forever. this great group of mates will be playing baseball forever. Like you don't want to close the chapter. Like it's such an adult move to be like, and here's what happened to them. One joined a cult and we never saw him again.
And like, why would the kids care? The kids watching this movie, why would they give a shit what happened to them when they're adults and boring?
So again, I think you know why, and I think it's one of those things where we don't know enough about baseball to get the reference, but I think there is a reference in there because you only learn that kid has the nickname the Jet at the very end.
Yeah,
I think the Jet is like a famous baseball player.
Yeah,
because you have the scene at the end where he is like the commentator, and there's this like footage of an actual baseball game. So I think it's meant to be like for the kids watching this that love baseball. It's like, oh my god, this is the story of that guy.
Yeah,
of like baseball player. But I don't know enough baseball to be like that. Yeah, he's definitely a famous baseball player.
Yeah. Did you see that
it
this
is
film...
fake? I'm afraid. There's no Benny the Jet Rodriguez is fictional.
Man, that would have been so good though.
Yeah.
It probably they wanted to base it on someone.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, I'm struggling to find this out.
Baseball, as far as I can tell, is very
there is a Benny Rodriguez. Oh, okay. Benny the Jet was a major league right fielder from 68 to 99. That's a long career.
So I guess it was meant to be like for the kids that care.
Oh, sorry. No, this history is proven to be a hoax for a number of reasons.
God damn it.
What a roller coaster.
This is a roller coaster.
This page posits an alternative reality in which the MLB does not exist and has been replaced by a league of fictional teams.
What?
Oh, okay. That's weird.
Oh my god. The internet's a strange place.
We've entered a rabbit hole, and I feel like we should run.
Yeah. No, I'm on a wiki of something I don't understand.
Yeah.
So for another rabbit hole, did you know there's 2 sequels to this?
Yeah, I kind of saw them. I saw them. I'm like, I don't even want to research them because part of me doesn't. Kind of like, wanting to leave and have the continuation of this world as is. Like, part of me doesn't want to know. Like,
well, if you want a continuation of the world, The Sandlot 2 is, from reading the plot summary, the same movie.
Oh, does that like the same kids and all?
No, it's the same plot.
Okay.
Almost identically with a new bunch of kids, and I think it's set in the 70s. It's it's a really lazy sequel.
Yeah.
Although The Sandlot 3 seems to have some sort of weird time travel involved. Like a kid just wakes up. I think he's an adult, and from what I could tell, he wakes up and he's 12 again, and he's playing Sandlot, and I'm like, okay, this seems insane.
He gets baseball to the head and he wakes up at 12, and then he's got to make these decisions to like coach this team to stop the Sandlot being developed into condos, into flats.
That sounds bonkers. That's great.
And then he gets, but the wild thing is that's kind of fine. Like the wild thing is at the end they like say thanks, whatever your name is, throw the baseball at him for him to catch. He misses it and it hits his head and he wakes back up, but not in the same reality that he left, but in a reality where like where he made better decisions. But like, he doesn't live those years.
Yeah.
Like he's got a different wife, different kids, a different he's like in this alternative reality. He's like loyal to the original team that he signed with or something, rather than being like the scumball player he's at the start. But it's like, surely that's really traumatic and scary.
Yeah.
To like wake up and not be the person you were.
Yeah, and for your children to be different, like
that'd be terrifying.
Oh my! I've killed my children. I've made it so they never even existed.
So I think it's really cool. Read somewhere Disney is making a TV show on Disney Plus of The Sandlot. I think it's meant to be the original cast, and they're coaching like a little league team.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
That I'm really excited to see because I want to see
you will. There's probably going to be a little bit more racial diversity and maybe some girls.
Might be a girl or two.
Put some girls in there. Yeah.
Which
there are girls in the Sandlot 2. There is a softball team.
Okay, but they're going to play softball.
Girls can only play softball. They can't play hardball.
For the racial diversity thing as well, I think for the time this film is set in, there were separate teams for black people and white people.
Oh, wow.
So for them to have a black kid on their team, and I'm pretty sure the hat he's wearing, the logo is for one of the black teams that were like quite a big deal. So I guess, I mean, obviously where it came out in the 90s, it was still like not that diverse, but for the time it was set in, it was probably quite a big deal.
Yeah. Like it's so interesting watching it from 2021, where you've got not only is like we're looking back saying, oh, this was made in the 90s, so I guess we can, but then the setting is actually what, the 60s or the 50s?
Yeah.
So it might even have been that like the writers were like, no, we should have a black kid in this film. For the purposes of having, I suppose it's not great that it's a token black person, but it's like we need to have some diversity here. We need to have, even if realistically that was the most whitewashed neighborhood ever.
Right.
It was very suburban.
I don't know. I mean, the 60s in America is a bit of a wild, not a great time to be a young black kid.
No.
It would have been a very different film if they went into that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. The thing this film does do well, I guess, is that it has one plot and it does that plot. There's not really a B plot. There's nothing else going on.
No.
But it's nice to have a film where the stakes are just low. But it is incredibly saccharine at the end.
Oh yeah. That
was a bit that didn't hold up, but not hold up isn't for me isn't the right word, because I didn't see it in the first place. But it was so sickly at the end. It was like nauseating. And it went way too far in that direction for me. I don't know if that's a British thing where it's like, oh no, stop being nice to each other, just be normal.
We don't like joy.
But I hated that last bit. Was like, it made me cringe.
We don't enjoy people showing emotion in this country.
There's no need for any of that.
No. He went too far as a child.
You can just tell me it's resolved, and that's fine. I don't need to see it.
Yeah.
I don't need to see him shake his dad's hand. Come on, what is this?
Too much.
That was my only real gripe about the film, was that it was it was just a bit too twee. But I absolutely loved the setting. I loved it was like it was nostalgic in the 90s, but it's gone now that it's 30 years later. It's fully retro vintage. It's just gorgeous. The scenes, I was really holding out for like a pinball arcade, or something like that. But even like the theme park was so well done. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
The vomit, wasn't a massive fan, but it looked real. So that was
maybe go to a doctor.
But I absolutely. I mean, I'm not sure about you, Dan, but I had small Dreamland flashbacks. Dan and I did a couple of seasons at a theme park, and it was mildly traumatizing.
Mildly.
So sometimes arcades and theme parks can put us on edge, but this one, it was so pretty, and it had that that really great vibe of the hot dog stands and the pretty lights and the names of the rides. It was absolutely gorgeous.
All the lights and everything. Yeah. The amount of vomit probably wasn't over exaggerated either, I have to say.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's a fact that makes me sad for you guys.
Thankfully, we never had a huge problem with chewing tobacco.
No.
What? There weren't 11-year-olds chomping down on chewing tobacco? Shocking.
I was trying to work out what it was, because obviously I had no idea. I think obviously it may be in the 90s, people, when they brought out that packet, would have been like, oh God, that's chewing tobacco. But I was like, what is in that? I was thinking, is that like a juice carton full of alcohol?
No. It looked like a bag of flour.
Yeah,
they were doing like shitloads of coke. That was it.
Very different film.
What a tone shift that would be if they just start railing lines.
The second half of the film would have been a much faster pace.
We're going to play baseball right now.
So I guess out of 10 then, how many biggest pickles they've ever been in would you give this?
For me, I think I'm going to say like 7 biggest pickles out of 10. Like, it probably should be lower, but because of nostalgia and because that world's so wonderfully realized and so idyllic, like, you can't help but sort of, I don't know, being tranced by it a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
It was pretty joyful to watch. Like, I'd give it a solid 5 pickles. Mm-hmm. God, Rick and Morty has just ruined pickles for me.
Okay. How about a solid 5 lines of coke they could have done?
I'd give it 5 wads of chewing tobacco, and then 5 puddles of vomit. Out of 10. It was I loved so much about like the set, watching it, and like stills from it. It's got that kind of every screener painting kind of vibe to it, where it is just beautiful, and even like just the wide shots of the dusty Sandlot was really nice. And these kids having a lovely summer. Like, I've had summers like that. Let's not be wild. Not with 8 friends, but I've had summers where I've had friends, and it was lovely.
Yeah.
And it it was so that bit of it I thought was really lovely, and some of the child actors were so comic, like they really reminded me of like comics that I read as a kid, like the Beano, where it was like you had each like kid was like their little own caricature, and I really enjoyed that. But I thought that the plot, I've got no affinity to baseball, and I think I'd watch it again if it was on, which is normally like a good sign. Not that I think it's ever going to be shown in the UK. Like it's really not a film for us.
Not at all. No, I'm so glad I was able to force it on you.
I know. I'm not mad. It was.
No, this isn't forced on us.
Yeah, no, we enjoyed this
one. Wasn't forced on us. I think I'd give it 7 balls with the guts busted out. It's a horrible term. I think I'd give it like a solid 7 out of 10 because it is that sort of like nostalgia for a time you weren't in. Feeling, which I don't know if there's a specific word for that.
It's called Stranger Things.
Yeah, like it's probably in German or something. But yeah, it's got that sort of nostalgia for being a kid. Like no specific time period. It's just got that like nostalgia for just being a kid and having this insane view of the world that everything is huge and dramatic and 1,000 times bigger than it should be.
Right.
Yeah, but the stakes are still comfortably low.
Yeah. And like they're never in any real danger because the dog isn't a violent dog. But they're convinced they are. Like as an adult, you can watch it and be like, these kids are in no danger. They will be fine. It's just a dog. Like it's just a dog, and it's relatively well trained. It's just defensive.
It even gives them all the baseballs back at the end.
Yeah, it's a sweet dog. It's just a guard dog.
I love that. That's also like the best present these kids could get. Is like now we can play forever.
It's sweet.
And they get the dog on the team as well. He sits there in his little t-shirt.
And I think it's just that nostalgia for being a teenager, like a kid. Just enjoying the world.
Yeah.
I think I'd give it a 7 too. I'd give it 7 different nicknames for Babe Ruth out of 10. Because it was just a really enjoyable movie. Like obviously we said it had its couple of problematic parts, but like you say, it's just the nostalgia of being a kid and that sort of time period in your life. And it's like they just had fun and it was an enjoyable movie. So I really enjoyed it. Might watch it again at some point, but like I said, not like seek it out to watch it immediately again. No. But maybe at some point.
If I ever have a child that's really into baseball.
For some reason.
You know just what to watch for some weird reason. Yeah.
Well, with that, I have been Dan.
I have been Michael.
I've been Helena.
I've been Damian.
And Damian, where can we find you? Even though, you're definitely a bigger podcaster than all of us.
So you can listen to me on Scaredy Boys, which is available on any all good and bad podcast apps. Or you can find me personally on Twitter at Midday Pajamas.
Nice. You can find this podcast on Twitter as well at Hilton Pod. That's at HILTM Pod. If you watch this film, let us know what you think.
We've not had any like proper disasters yet. Touch wood.
Probably shouldn't have done that.
Say
that.
Yeah, now you've cursed yourself.